What's up, guys? Welcome. It's Kati Kleber back with the Fresh RN podcast, and we are going to start a series on communication. So this is geared towards someone who's newer to the clinical environment or someone who's just not feeling so hot with their communication skills. We're going to do an episode on how to get better at communicating with your nursing colleagues, like that team that is there with you throughout the shift, as well as communicating with people who just come by real quick to check on your patient or work with your patient and then will leave, kind of like PT, OT, ST, all the providers, as well as difficult conversations, talking to the actual patient and their loved ones, and then finally how to talk to your own loved ones. So we're going to start off with how to chat with your own nursing team. So I recommend touching base at the beginning of the shift with anyone that you're going to be sharing a workload with. It is probably going to be any CNA. And when I start off my shift with my CNA, I don't just say, hey, and then just go on my day. I touch base with them. I wait until after I've gotten a report and I hear all the information about my patients. And then I'll let them know, hey, this patient's going to, take a while. They're, total care. I have to crush all their meds. They're paralyzed or whatever it is. You also want to let them know the chattiest patients. So the ones that will talk their ear off and maybe they're easy clinically, but you're stuck in their room for 30 minutes, that kind of thing. Maybe sensitive situations. Like I've had patients where don't let this person visit, or the person that's in the room is not the wife, that's the healthcare power of attorney, that's actually the girlfriend, like all those kinds of things. Really helpful to let them know that kind of stuff. And it builds rapport, like you're on the same team, getting ready to tackle your day together. Okay. And I like to do that with the CNA that's assigned to me. I don't also just go straight up and start talking business. I do build rapport, like, hey, how are you doing? What's up? Did you get some good sleep last night? Oh, that Starbucks looks good, or whatever, whatever it is. But I think it's important to build rapport. I also, at the beginning of the shift, if I am going to be in a pod with another nurse where we're going to trade breaks or something like that, I'll touch base with the other nurse and say, hey, how's your patients looking? Are they all doing okay? I want to know if any of their patients aren't doing well, if they're going to have any needs, like maybe they have a drip or two where they need another nurse to sign off, keeping me in the loop about that stuff. And when I ask them about theirs and they tell me, then that opens the door for me to say, okay, and then this is what I've got going on. The more you can be on the same page about that kind of stuff, the better, so that it's not you just kind of in your silo going to work and just trying to quietly do your work without anyone noticing. This is like a team sport here, and it's really helpful to be aware of everything else going on with other people. I also continually check in throughout the day. So like I kind of touch base at the beginning, then I go about my business, but then once I get done with like my morning med pass, I'll see, hey, how you doing? Are you caught up? If I'm, doing pretty good on time management and I've got some time, I'll ask my CNA how they're doing, my other nurse, if there's anything I can do to help. And I've seen some hospitals do this, which I really like. It's like this color coding system, green, yellow, red. Green is I'm good. I'm available to help somebody because I'm so far ahead. Yellow is I'm okay. I'm kind of on time with my things, but I'm not in a place where I can help other people. And then red is like I'm drowning. So, if your hospital uses that system, I really like it because it helps expedite communication. And, you can quickly say, hey, what color are you? And then they can say, oh, I'm red. All right, what can I do to help you get to yellow? So so you're no longer drowning, that kind of a thing. I really like that level of communication. That might be something, if you're not doing it on your unit, maybe something to think about implementing. And then also making sure your other people are getting a break. And as you learn other personalities and other people, you can know who are the people that are going to take a break the second it's at all possible versus who are the people who they have to have someone else tell them to go get a break because they're not going to do it themselves. And they think they have to get everything done for their patients before they even go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? Like you're going to meet people like that. So if you're working with someone who like never takes a break, and it's especially if it's a newer nurse, maybe needs a little permission, I guess. Say, hey, have you had a break yet? Have you had a chance to get off the unit? Do you need a second? Can I pass those meds to that patient for you so you can get a break? That kind of thing, because then they're going to do that stuff for you as you're reaching out to do that. And that builds a really great team mentality. So one thing I've noticed is, someone's level of urgency changes and they don't communicate that with other people. But, we're so wrapped up in our own world, in our own to-do list and our med list and everything, that we're not like paying close attention to when someone, is walking at a normal speed versus a crazy speed, right? We're not like paying that close attention to our other colleagues. Paradoxically, though, we think they're paying that close of attention to us, but they're not. I promise they're not. So if your level of urgency changes and you need help from people to safely take care of your patient, you got to communicate it. And that includes your CNAs. Like, I've seen patients go downhill and the nurse, says to the CNA, hey, can you get a blood pressure on this patient? And I see that the situation is going downhill, but they communicate it in a way where it's like, oh, can you get this blood sugar real quick or this blood pressure, like a normal task? And to the CNA, who does not know that something is going on, that doesn't know your level of urgency changed, they're thinking, oh, I'll get a blood sugar when I'm done charting. I'll go get that blood pressure when I'm done doing this bed bath. They don't know that we went from normal routine to urgency or a broaching emergency. So, and then the nurse will get upset that the CNA is not moving fast enough. It's like, hey, hold on. The CNA has no idea. They're not in the room. They don't see that. And they didn't see that you're getting like, oh my gosh, their heart rate is blank or whatever. So make sure that if your level of urgency changes and you need help from other people, that you don't just kind of hope they notice, but that you really clearly say, instead of, can you go get a blood sugar for me? Say, hey, Mr. Smith and a 54, I think that he is very hypoglycemic. He's not talking right now. I really need a blood sugar stat on him. And then I'm going to call the doctor, or I'm going to do X, Y, and Z while you do that. Can you tell me what that is the moment that you get that? See, that's very different than, can you go get a blood sugar? And same thing with blood pressure or any other thing that you might be delegating in an urgent situation. I find that people really want to help, and they're like, the moment you say, hey, can you come help me with this? I'm really, they're absolutely willing to help, but to like rely on people to notice that you're doing not as well. Don't just communicate clearly. We need direct communication that expedites things. And it's not being needy, because that's what we have to do as nurses. Like, we have to communicate with one another when things change, and not just like hope people notice us. I also want you with your colleagues to pay attention to non-verbals. Okay. Maybe they're frustrated, maybe hurt, maybe someone said something super rude to them. It could have been you, but let's be honest, it's probably something else. And so don't take their, not so great attitude, or maybe they're a little short with you. Maybe don't take it personally and just assume, lean in with some curiosity. Hey, I noticed are you doing okay? You seem a little off. You seem, a little upset. Is something going on? And then that can open the door to say, oh yeah, I actually really don't feel well. And I've gone to the bathroom like 10 times. And I really don't feel good, and I want to go home, but I don't have PTO. Like, you can open the door for that kind of stuff. So don't take their like short nonverbals or their short responses and any nonverbals like personally, because I've seen that happen too, where someone's not their normal self and then people take it personally, and then it turns into a situation that doesn't need to turn into. Even at the talking point of, hey, I noticed you're not like yourself today. What's up? Are you doing okay? Because a lot of times it's stuff that's going on at home. Maybe a physician was super rude to them. Maybe a patient was, and they just need to talk about it, almost have their like frustration witnessed by someone else and validated, and then they can move on and do a lot better throughout the shift. And plus they know that someone is paying attention to them. So that's another great way to build rapport. Also, let's talk about the follow-up. So let's say you delegated something to somebody, or someone was behind and you helped them kind of catch up. Or maybe a patient wasn't doing so hot and maybe you gave them a fluid bolus to help your colleague out. If you can circle back and check on them, that is really helpful. It lets people know that you're paying attention, that you care, that again, this is this team mentality. So if you can circle back with them and say, hey, you doing okay? Maybe the physician was super rude to them. You chatted with them. You did what we were just talking about, kind of validating what they're experiencing. Maybe check back in a few hours later, see how they're doing, see if they're doing better, that kind of stuff. Just, helps people feel supported. And when people feel supported and safe, they work better and can relax more. And then they're going to also be a better teammate to you too. So let's talk about those super awkward moments when things kind of go wrong. Like maybe you delegate something to a CNA and they say, well, that's not my patient. Or they say they're going to do something in a time frame that's really not going to work. And the level of urgency is high and they're kind of refusing to do what's best for the patient at that time, which we've all seen, right? Not fun. It's hard to navigate that situation when you're in the midst simultaneously of some serious patient issue. One of the things I like to do is kind of reflect in that moment. So let's say I say, hey, can you go get a blood pressure on Mr. Smith as soon as possible? And they're like, no, I need to finish putting in my schedule. Then I would explain the situation a little bit further. Hey, so I get that you're doing your schedule, but I think he's very hypotensive and he's sweaty and his heart rate is increased and I need to call the physician. Can you please go get a blood pressure on him very quickly? And if they still say no, which I really hope at that point somebody wouldn't, but I would reflect what they're saying. So reflect the situation back to them in a straightforward kind of way. So let me get this straight. A patient has a clinical need and is not doing well right now, but you're refusing to go do a task that's been delegated to you to take care of that patient so that you can put in your schedule. Is that correct? So we're on the same page? That's what's going on right now. You're going to do your schedule instead of taking care of a patient who is not doing well. Sometimes if you reframe that kind of stuff, then they can say, oh, all right. Okay, fine. I get it, Katie. I'll go get it. Geez, they're trying to see if they can finish what they were doing and they're going to see if you're going to let them, right? Like, don't let them, don't let them get it past you, right? I think that's the nice try, but that's not going to work. This guy literally needs you to take his blood pressure because it's going to slow me down calling the physician. And this whole situation right here is just making it worse. Can you just go check his blood pressure? By the time we got done with this situation, talking about it, you could have been done. And I would know what to do with this guy. That kind of thing. Let's not take it personally. I think that's when it turns into something bigger than it needs to be. Because if they're going to act like that, that's their thing, but we don't have to let them get away with that. And then if we're seeing repeated insubordination where, okay, they're refusing to take care of patients so that they can do personal needs, then that's a talk to a manager. But in that moment, you got to do your best you can to give that person every chance to get situated and do what they need to do before we move it up the chain to the manager, if that makes sense. Also, let's say somebody just does something incorrectly. It's kind of weird, right, to provide correction to somebody, but if you can make it kind of casual, it really helps. So one time I had a CNA who would just copy and paste everybody's, her rounding, she just copy and pasted. If nothing changed, she would just copy and paste it. But part of that was range of motion. I'm sorry. Ain't nobody doing range of motion these days. Let's be real. It's kind of like counting respirations. A lot of people aren't doing that. And she was not doing range of motion, but that is in the charting, but she was charting that she was doing it. And so I was like, hey, I just wanted to show you something. I saw that you got all your charting and wonderful. That's great. And it really helps me, be able to do what I need to do. But one thing I noticed is that you're charting range of motion, active range of motion on him. So he's paralyzed on the left side. He can't do active range of motion. And so it makes it look like you weren't actually doing it when you're copying and pasting that, because it's clearly not true if he's, because he can't do that. So I just want you to know, because I've gotten dinged on chart audits before where I was charting something like that because I was just copying and pasting what I thought I was supposed to, but it wasn't actually accurate to the situation. And I don't want you to have that happen to you. So I would take off those active range of motion charting things on this guy. All right. Like frame it like that. Like, hey, I don't want you to get in trouble. And a lot of times people are probably just doing it the way they were taught, and they don't know maybe she didn't know what active ROM meant and passive ROM meant. Like maybe she forgot what that was. I'm gonna assume the best, without being naive enough to know that, hey, it's easier if I just copy and paste. That's probably what was going on, like that kind of thing. So keep that in mind. All right, next, I really want you to take some time to get to know personalities on your unit. It's going to help you a lot because you can gauge your expectations accordingly, right? Like if you have that nurse you work with that is super lazy and is going to do the least amount of work possible and is going to let his IV pumps run or beep incessantly until someone else addresses them, like that kind of thing. You want, or if you have someone who is the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where they're obsessively detailed to the point where they're wasting their time on details that do not matter, but they just want to be right and they just want to get it done right. They want to know all these little details in a report, or they're really long-winded. That's helpful to know. Or someone who's always going to throw other people under the bus and they're never going to take accountability for being late with something or being wrong about something. Or the people who are going to do the least amount possible at the bedside so they can kick it in the nurse's station and hang out. Like when you start to pick up on those kinds of things, you can kind of gauge your expectations accordingly. Like you're not going to cause like personality changes in these people to like totally change their work ethic, but it helps better inform you with yours. So, you can know who you can rely on. Like maybe that guy who's super lazy is really great in an emergency. And that's the person you want to call on to say, hey, help me out. Because oftentimes, people who are very good at details, can be really helpful. But when we get down to like brass tacks emergency, sometimes they're so lost in those details, it's hard for them to focus on truly what matters because they've elevated every little detail to be the exact same level of importance. So the more you can learn about personalities and adjust your expectations accordingly, really helpful. So I encourage you to really observe, sit back and like watch how people interact with each other, how people respond to one another, how easily offended are some people. Like if a patient says something kind of rude and crazy and immature, which nurses take that kind of stuff personally and which have kind of that emotional intelligence to be like, all right, chill out, or man, he's not doing so hot today, but then they move on with their day because they're not taking it personally. It's helpful to observe that stuff. It just helps you inform you better to gauge your expectations accordingly. I also really encourage you to ignore gossip and don't like perpetuate it. Happens a lot on the nurse's station. Conversation can get real spicy real quick. And I encourage you not to engage in that, because if someone's gossiping with you about other people, I'm telling you, they're gossiping about you to others. Be careful who you share things with that are really important and personal, especially if it's someone who's chatting with other people about everything on the unit. I have had people try to chat with me about things that I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I really don't care about who that CNA slept with last weekend. I don't care at all. One way that you can kind of deflect that, because we don't, to be like a nice person on the unit and someone who's fun to be around, but also kind of keeping it serious, is you don't, when someone brings that up, you don't want to just say, I am not interested in hearing about that. You want to have a little tact, a little social skills there where you can discourage that behavior without being sterile about it. So the way that I would do that is if someone starts continually talking to me about somebody, I don't care, right? What I do is I get very disengaged in the conversation. I don't care, so I'm not going to act like I care. I'm not going to act like I'm interested in this conversation about something that is really remedial, I guess. So what I would do is be very disengaged with that, but then I would kind of steer the conversation elsewhere and be very engaged when we're talking about actually interesting things that aren't at the expense of somebody else. And what people pick up on eventually, not right away, but okay, Katie's not fun to gossip with, or Sarah's not fun to gossip with, but she's really cool to talk about, the latest Marvel movies, or I don't know, whatever you're super into. If you can kind of gauge how your level of interest, that will kind of teach people what topics to talk about around you that you're going to really engage in. And if you're in a group where you're seeing people talk about like negatively about somebody else, I don't say a whole lot. And then what I do is I kind of, like I've been in a nurse's station where these experienced nurses are talking about how terrible this new grad is. And I'm like, thinking to myself, like, how insensitive and like not cool this is. But like, I'm around like everybody who's being mean. Like, how am I going to navigate this? And then, so what I would do is like, think of a couple cool things or good catches this person had. And I bring those up. Yeah. But did you see that she caught that low potassium or she got saw that the patient was having a bunch of ectopy and called the physician and got him, a stat BMP and realized they were hyponatremic or whatever it was and got the correction or hypokalemic or whatever, bring that up, to counter that point, or I've done this before, like, oh man, I wonder what y'all say about me when I'm not here. Like, come on, this isn't cool, where you can make it kind of jokey, but it deters the conversation a bit. And I'm sure people may talk about, oh, you're not fun to talk about that stuff with, but that's right. I'm not that person that identifies with that. And if you're looking for that, you can find somebody else. Right. And if things get inappropriate, which they really can. Nurses are famous for locker room talk. I guess it's nurses station talk where I'm saying, like, things get spicy kind of quickly. And I know some very modest people. I also know some very not modest people, and we're all working together. Right. And it gets to sex talk. It gets to whatever talk. And it gets a little dicey. If you're not comfortable with it, find a reason to leave the nurse's station, or you can be like, all right, guys, I get it, but we're not going to be talking about my sex life here. All right. Like, off limits here. Okay. But kind of make it into a little bit of a joke. So you're not like, demonizing these other people, because you don't want to alienate them and have them think like, ugh, Katie's such a whatever. Like, we're still friends. Like, this is still cool to talk to you, but I just don't want to talk about this. Is that okay? Like, so if you can think of kind of a tactful way to communicate that, it preserves the relationship, or they can keep talking about whatever they want. Just don't be asking me questions. Like, I'm not talking about that. So you kind of get comfortable in your own skin, confidently say that kind of stuff while still caring about the other people. It kind of lets them know, hey, this is my boundary. All right. I'm sorry. I'm just that like talking about my sex life or talking about, I don't know. Let's be honest, that's the one that gets brought up that people don't want to talk about. You can put up that boundary gently and not really demoralize anybody who's come up to it, but it's up to you to set that. And that can really set the tone where you maintain the relationship, but not, and still have respect for one another, but they just know, all right, okay, I can't be talking to Katie about that, or I can't be talking to whomever about that. So my last thing is be thankful. Like, if somebody comes and helps you out, even if it's part of their job, even if that's what they're supposed to do, like, hey, thanks, I appreciate that. That stuff goes a long way. You just think about the feeling you get when, you come in, you help a physician with something and they thank you. That feels good, right? I mean, it's part of your job. You're supposed to come in and help them. But when they thank you, it feels great to be appreciated for the things that you're doing. And that same thing translates to your colleagues, and that same thing translates to your CNAs in particular. So when they're doing a great job, when they're helping you out, when they're doing those things, I really encourage expressing gratitude, because boy, that helps a shift go by. It helps build rapport and relationship, and build connection. And that's what can really make a shift run by smoothly, even if it's a tough shift. If you've got a lot of people who you are connected with, who you trust, who you can get through the hardest thing with, it makes all the difference in the world and can make work a heck of a lot more fun. So I hope that makes sense. And those are my communication tips for working with your nursing team. Next week, we are going to talk about communication tips when you're talking to other members of the healthcare team. So thank you guys. I want to let you know I got all these new resources that I'm working on right now. If you go to freshrn.com/courses, you can find, I just released a new course called Preceptor Pro. So it is a crash course for those of you kind of learning how to be in the preceptor role, how to give feedback, how to deal with the know-it-all, how to deal with the timid nurse, all that kind of stuff. So I just released that course, freshrn.com/courses. You can check that out there. And don't forget, guys, sign up for my email list. I'll have a link to that below this video. That's where you can stay completely updated on everything. If you're enjoying this podcast, enjoying these tips, I send out weekly tips with more little, book recommendations, more communication tips, empathy tips, little stories from the bedside. And that's the best way to stay connected with me, with all the new stuff going on. And just to let you guys know what's going on, I just released Preceptor Pro. I'm going to release 2 smaller courses in the next 3-4 months. One will be a charge nurse crash course with some leadership skills. And then I'm going to have a critical thinking course. But then early next year, we're going to launch a membership platform for Fresh RN where you pay a little bit a month, but you get access to, I believe it'll be 3 or 4 courses. And then also, I don't offer discounts to my big courses, but the only way to get discounts will be to be in that inner circle and and have that membership. And then I'm going to have weekly and monthly videos and content, and also a community where you can sign up and be anonymous and ask questions and get help and support. And a lot of my time and effort is really going to go into supporting those members. So I'm looking to launch that in January, maybe February, once I get these next 2 courses done. So I'm really excited to offer that new resource. And if you want to stay updated and make sure you don't miss, I'll have an introductory sale. Just get on that email list and I'll have it at the description of this video for the podcast. So thank you guys so much, and we will see you next week.